they're afraid of something much larger than the 11 or 12 centimeters they're forecasting.
Wow. And, of course, we know, we have information that the government is moving everything, all of its underground bases and operations to, I think it's at the 33rd degree above the latitude.
Yes, I know. They're really fond of these number combinations. You know,
well,
19.447 is a prime number within their system. 33 is all the permutations in terms of, you know, sines and cosines of 19.47, such as 38, 39 also have a place of honor, and they get really whipped up by all of this. But, of course, to a certain extent, there's a real reason for it, because within universe, these are actually very key understandings that are required, and they represent hyperdimensional reality, or hyperdimensional metaphysical underpinning to reality. Just recently, there was these articles that came out that linked dark matter with the creation of the suns and all of this, and it's like, well, there was, you know, several $100,000 of dollars to produce a well-duh moment. Everybody should understand that that's the case, because the universe is basically made of tetrahedrons, which is the smallest possible shape that can exist, and meet all of the criteria that the universe requires. A really good discussion of it can be found in Synergetics in like the first 4 chapter of Buckminster Fuller's work, and he goes on to describe how the universe has to be constructed, and lo and behold, you know, years later, we discovered that indeed this is the case, and the hyperdimensional realities are in fact used by NASA and all the other science and even all of the shadow government, and they rely on it. And key components of those are embraced in these numeric codings of 33 and other significant numbers.
Yeah, and that's true. And another interesting thing is that they use a lot of esoteric numerology and astrology as well. They're quite adept at that, probably because some of the people who are at the top of the ladder are beyond the 33rd degree of Masonry or whatever, Rosicrucian, whatever.
No, well, no, if you're talking 33rd degree to be accurate, you'd have to say in the U.S. that would be the Scottish Rite. Anything above the 3rd degree, you're not technically a Mason. You have to be invited to pass out of the standard Mason lodge from which they recruit into what's known as the Scottish Rite.
Ah.
And then you go on to the upper echelon, and theoretically there's 13 degrees beyond the 33rd degree in the Scottish Rite. But the transition between the 32nd and 33rd degree is reputed to be quite tough for many different reasons. But on the other hand, your statement is quite accurate, and these people take this numerology very seriously because they understand how the hyperdimensional nature of universe actually manifests, and that these numbers can be meaningful in that way. So, as an instance, the Hawaii is at 19.47 degrees of latitude because of the nature of the hyperdimensional structure of planet Earth. The red spots on the giant gas giants that are the perpetual storms are at 19.47 degrees latitude because of that same structure. Sunspots form in the sun at 19.47 degrees because of the internal hyperdimensional structure. Once you get all of this math down, then it becomes almost it does become, not almost, it is a form of very intense symbolism that can convey vast quantities of information in a relatively short period of time. So, for instance, the powers that be are real hyped on the number 11 and the number 9. Number 11, of course, is significant because it's the length of the sunspot cycle. It's also a key number in the formation of all different kinds of other numbers numerologically, and it is referenced as being one number past divinity, which was described as being the number 10. 9 is of special interest to him numerologically because it is the number before divinity, but it's also seen as the number of completion or ascension. And it goes on and on and on, but a lot of these things ultimately come back to the Platonic solids and the shapes that are actually manifest in universe, and basically these shapes can be seen in the periodic table, but they exist in all these different... When you do that, you find that a lot of these conclusions are in fact interwoven, and the world sharpens its picture for you. For instance, a lot of the movements of the powers that be make no sense if you take UFOs and aliens out of the picture. If you put them back in, all of a sudden, yes, okay, this stuff does make sense.
Yeah.
So it's one of those kind of extractions. I don't have any personal evidence for it, but yes, I'm operating under the assumption that since 1956, there's been basically a functional form of anti-gravity or / free energy available at the shadow world level.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. I agree with that totally. Now, some people are talking about the possibility of one way that the powers that be, one of the little games that they could play on us is a possible space war using holographic technology. And, with the winners, of course, being the heroes, and then they introduce us to our new masters, the Anunnaki, or whoever it is that they've got in under wraps. Is there anything in the language that comes around 2010, 2011 that would support...
Unfortunately, I have to agree that you could read a lot of the stuff that's in our Alien Wars subset of the Space Goat Farts entity. You could read it that way. It could be taken as support. Now, bear in mind that when we get down to the detail level of the aspect and attribute sets, we're at a level where there might be 20,000 such opportunities for me to choose. And so I might choose some that are highly attractive to, my personal predisposition towards space aliens, and miss others that, would be more bland to me.
Yeah. Interesting.
But you are correct. We do have some information that under the Alien War subset that would support a scenario that way. Could also be interpreted many other ways, but it certainly is one.
That's one of the ways it could be, yeah.
Yeah, and I would also suppose, by the way, that if they were to go and do that kind of thing, since we see how sophisticated they are in doing chemtrails, probably the holograms wouldn't be necessary. They probably have, some kind of devices that they could actually go up and, shoot at each other for a while.
Right, exactly. Yeah, but they have triangles and all kinds of devices that look just like, they came from other places and probably were back engineered.
Yeah, exactly so. Yeah, and I personally have seen something like that in 1972, which was, a giant floaty thing that was silent, blocked out, a considerable area, maybe a mile of the sky in the northwest before chemtrails, and, went zipping off with no sound and scares the blood. His blood tries to crawl right out of your feet. Yeah.
Very good. Well, we know with regards to food shortages that Monsanto and several other corporations and individuals have set up a food bank, the seed bank.
The Doomsday Vault.
Doomsday Vault. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, and you notice how high up in the latitudes they set it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very interesting, especially given that Monsanto has done everything in their power to destroy the natural cycles of plants and growing with the killer seeds and so on and so forth. And
by the way, that's also part of the continuing food crisis currently hitting India, which is so bad that India is having, as a nation, is having to repeal tax structures to try and encourage food imports. Mm-hmm. And it's a side effect of some of the GM crop issues of a couple of years back,
Yeah, doesn't the World Bank kind of loan them money and then they force the country to...
Evil little structure, The World Bank and the BIS. Well, all these people have, karmic debts that they'll have to live out.
I sure hope so.
Well, we can be quite certain of that. I mean, I take that as, a basic tenet of how a universe operates. And, the more scary nastiness you inflict, the more you're going to have to get retribution back. It's a zero-sum game, I think.
I think so, too. But, so far, we're still living under the appearance or the illusion of that all being successful, and I think that there's... Yeah,
but people take karma very simplistically. If you look at it from the sophisticated view of the Jain or some of the pre-Vedic Hindu descriptions, karma is actually a physical property. It's a superfine level of matter that is beyond our ability to perceive directly. Okay, and if you look at the world as the universe is composed of energetic pulses that are colliding with each other and provide the illusion of the solidity because they're happening so fast. 22 trillion times a second, they're smashing into each other, and our brains work at maybe 30 frames a second, so for us, this is like solid stuff, right?
Right.
Okay, so if you look at it that way, karma is between this, like, 30 frames a second level of perception and the
Right.
22 trillion times a second impact. And now here's another side issue to it. There's this really brilliant fellow now deceased by the name of Ian Lungold, I think. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
He did all kinds of stuff about the Mayan consciousness, all this kind of stuff. He's like Kalaman. He has a different interpretation. He's really a smart fellow. But one of his enduring contributions to humans is this very short article he wrote that you can find online called The Game of Loss and Lack. And what he does is he describes a situation that tells you basically how karma works relative to this kind of stuff. In other words, why do bad guys prosper? Well, here's the deal. In universe, consciousness at one particular level is agnostic. It doesn't care good or bad. What it cares is an issue of what they call ethical risk. The more you put yourself out there as a subset of consciousness within this particular view of the game of loss and lack, the more you're generating, quote, excitement for other parts of consciousness to come your way, and it starts this like feedback loop. So the more you are bad, but do it in a particular mental mindset, the more your badness is accepted by universe, so to speak, and quote, rewarded, at least in the short run. Okay, ultimately we know, you can only take that so far before everybody gets, in terms of the consciousness that's coming and accreting to you, gets really bored with this same old repetition thing. And Ian Lungold's article goes to the point that really the way to approach this whole game of loss and lack is through the concept of taking ethical risk, which really puts you out there against your own better interests, but doing it for a positive viewpoint. And here's how you can gauge success and that this is all actually working for you. So, to a certain extent, this is a very good description of the karmic process that goes on at that particular level, and we're seeing that play out now. You'll note that the strain of all of that particular personality in that particular role was such that George Bush, once he was out, he just dropped from sight. He's just nowhere to be seen. And he's like sort of decompressing from all of this because of that level of personal exposure and that accretion of vast quantities of karma. Now, in the Hindi and the Jain understanding of karma, which makes sense in an energetic view of the world, your consciousness becomes heavy, if you will, with these accumulated karmic particles that you have to shed, and they're at that level between 30 frames a second and 22 trillion times a second at which matter is actually created. And you have to go through some particular levels of process to get clean of them, and that's sort of the basic point of it all.
Well, that makes total sense to me. In fact, I was just writing a blog entry about it, that very subject. So except you said it much better than I did. I might go back and revise my little piece.
Well, before you do it, go and read Ian's article, because he said it far better than I could. He was very eloquent about it.
Yes, I just stumbled across a different article by him, and it was excellent. Now, and there's another weird event that I've heard you mention in the past, and that is in 2010, it appears that certain people literally walk into another dimension. And I think you mentioned Dick Cheney as one of those people.
No. If I did, it was just merely in passing and jokingly as a potential candidate in my view, right?
Oh.
No. We don't do personalities.